In the quiet port town of Bristol, England, on September 2, 1925, a boy named Trevor Herbert Stanford was born into modest surroundings. Few could have predicted that this child would go on to become one of Britain's most successful piano entertainers of the 1950s and early 1960s under the name Russ Conway. Behind the stage name and the smiling public persona was a man riddled with secrets, personal turmoil, and an overwhelming yearning for peace that often escaped him. Trevor's early years were difficult. Raised in a working-class environment, he and his siblings learned early on that financial security was a luxury. Their household was not filled with glamour, but music was present. Sometimes on the radio, other times echoing faintly from neighboring homes. Young Trevor, however, didn't require much exposure to feel the pull of melody. He was fascinated with the piano, drawn to its ability to convey joy, sorrow, and everything in between without a single word. He was largely self-taught. Lacking the formal training that would mold a concert pianist, he instead developed a unique style through sheer force of will and instinct. It was rough around the edges but alive with emotion. He played by ear, replicating popular melodies he heard on records or radio broadcasts. Even at a young age, he displayed an intuitive understanding of rhythm and phrasing. As war broke out, Trevor enlisted in the Royal Navy at the age of 17. He served with courage and dedication during World War II. However, military life left its scars, some visible, others buried deep. During his service, he suffered a serious injury that left him with part of a finger amputated. For most, this would have been the end of any musical dream. But Trevor defied physical limitations and retrained himself to play piano with his remaining fingers, concealing the disability with exceptional dexterity. Few ever suspected that one of Britain's top-selling pianists lacked part of a finger. After the war, he struggled to find direction. Music had always been a comfort, but making a living from it seemed far-fetched. For a time, he drifted between jobs, unsure of his path. Eventually, he began working as a songwriter and session musician, sometimes under pseudonyms. He wrote light orchestral numbers and novelty songs that found minor success, but he remained behind the curtain. It wasn't until 1955, when he adopted the name Russ Conway, that he began to appear on record sleeves. He first came to the public's attention through his association with EMI's Columbia label, and it didn't take long for audiences to take notice. In 1957, Conway made a name for himself with his piano interpretations of familiar tunes, blending a jaunty music hall flair with precise control and upbeat charm. His ability to turn even the most pedestrian melody into a toe-tapping performance became his hallmark. By 1958, Russ Conway had become a sensation. His recording of Side Saddle, a bright, danceable tune, catapulted him into the spotlight. It reached #1 on the UK singles chart and remained there for 4 weeks. The public couldn't get enough. That same year, he released Roulette, another brisk, perky number that also hit #1. These instrumental hits defied the odds in a pop market increasingly dominated by vocalists and American rock and roll imports. Conway's popularity during this era was extraordinary. He made frequent television appearances and became a regular on programs such as The Billy Cotton Band Show. Audiences loved his clean-cut image, bright smile, and musical precision. At the height of his career, he sold over 30 million records, a figure that rivaled the biggest acts of his day. His performances weren't confined to the studio. Conway embarked on extensive concert tours, often playing to packed theaters across the UK. His charm extended beyond his fingers. On stage, he was warm, self-effacing, and relatable. He'd chat between numbers, poke fun at his mistakes, and bring a sense of ease to the proceedings that endeared him even more to the public. But behind this cheerful exterior, Conway was deeply troubled. The expectations that came with fame weighed heavily. He suffered from severe anxiety, depression, and inner conflict. As homosexuality remained criminalized in Britain until 1967, Conway, who was gay, was forced to live a double life. This concealment added layers of stress and isolation to his already pressured world. He found solace in alcohol, which eventually became a serious problem. His drinking worsened during the 1960s, and with the rise of new musical trends like beat groups and psychedelic rock, Conway's style began to fall out of fashion. He tried to adapt, incorporating vocals into some of his recordings and changing his repertoire, but the public appetite had shifted. Health problems plagued him further. A series of minor strokes and complications from his earlier wartime injury gradually affected his playing. Yet he never gave up. He continued performing, often appearing at smaller venues, television specials, and variety shows. Even as his popularity waned, his commitment to performance remained unwavering. Conway also wrote and published his autobiography, The Conway Story, in 1960, offering a glimpse into the life of a man who had seen both glory and hardship. However, the most painful aspects of his personal life were carefully omitted. His private world remained a guarded mystery, even to those who knew him well. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, there was a modest revival of interest in his work. Nostalgia for the music of the 1950s brought renewed attention to figures like Conway. He appeared on retrospective programs and even returned to the recording studio. In 1986, he performed a series of shows to celebrate 30 years in show business. Despite fading from mainstream consciousness, his contributions were not forgotten by those who grew up with his records. His music continued to be played on radio and remained a fixture on compilations of mid-century British hits. By the 1990s, Conway's health had deteriorated substantially. He was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and the disease spread aggressively. Yet he remained stoic. In his final years, he reportedly took comfort in visits from friends, quiet evenings with music, and reflecting on a life filled with extremes, triumph and despair, laughter and loneliness. Russ Conway died on November 16, 2000, at the age of 75. His funeral was modest, in keeping with a man who had never truly sought the trappings of fame. Tributes came in from musicians, fans, and broadcasters who remembered him not just as a performer, but as a figure whose music brought cheer to an entire generation. Conway's catalog remains a time capsule of an era when melody reigned. His style, brisk, melodic, and confidently played, stood out in an age increasingly shaped by distortion and rebellion. His records still delight listeners with their exuberance, and his unique story continues to fascinate. What lingers, perhaps more than the hit records, is the sense of a man who fought through extraordinary obstacles, physical, emotional, and social, to share something bright with the world. He played through pain, through loss, through silence. He brought music to homes at a time when war memories were still fresh and the future uncertain. Russ Conway never shouted. He let his piano do the talking,